As a man reads hate comments on social media, he miserably remarks this isn't why he became a doctor and says he's currently buried in debt after failing to get his clinic running in 3 years and asks why the coronavirus had to spread just as he opened his clinic. He angrily shouts out why people are getting infected after visiting his clinic, and that it's not like his clinic is infected before accidentally dislodging his balance and falling down the bridge as he slowly drowns in the river. He remarks that he would never have been able to imagine at the time that an ordinary physician like him would become the divine visionary in a novel. He blearily sees a man standing over him and slowly gets up. Thinking that it's better to start again and be buried in debts than dying, he apologizes to the man but sees that he isn't in the hospital and looks around, remarking that it looks like a room from the Middle Ages. The man starts overdramatically crying and addresses him as Your Highness, asking if he can see him. He hesitantly asks who he is, so the man remarks it doesn't matter if he's forgotten him since he'll always be at his service, and introduces himself as Garden, his personal doctor. He gives him a glass of water, and the guy looks at the mirror in shock to see that he's a different person. He remembers the novel he was reading before going to drink alcohol and its character, Raquel Adria Magentana, who his face resembles right now. Raquel asks Garden to slap him on the cheek and does it himself and finds out that he does feel pain. Elated, he asks if he's really turned into the crown prince of the novel, which means that he can finally live without a worry of the mountain of debts he had accumulated through the years with his clinic. He feels a sudden pain and falls back down as Garden grabs him in alarm. He wonders what happened, saying he feels dizzy and weak all over and says this body feels way weaker than a person who's in their 40s. He disbelievingly realizes what it is, thinking back to the first half of the novel, Demon Sword Emperor, where Raquel, the crown prince, is a side character who only appears for a small amount of time and has been bedridden since he was young and then died at the age of 22. He asks Garden how old he is and finds out that he's 21, meaning he's only got a year left, depressingly remarking that all of his hopes of living a comfortable life after losing his debts have been crushed. He remembers that Raquel is getting the best treatments available and was also being blessed by clerics countless times, but still couldn't overcome his weakness, which means there's only one way. He tells Garden to get him as needles as he can, no matter what their shape or size, is inwardly remarking that he's going to save his own body. Later, he checks all of his 10 intermittent pulses and frustratingly finds that none of them show any symptoms of illnesses before Garden arrives with a large sack and lays the needles out. He heats the tip of a needle over a candle and tells Garden he's going to slightly poke his body with it, ignoring his pleas to not hurt himself despite going through a lot of pain and saying that he's going to be the next king, but Raquel asks him to trust him from here on out if nothing happens to his body. He lies down and punctures one of his 12 meridians connected to the lungs, enabling his lungs to properly function according to a pop-up screen before it says his lungs have given him a thumbs up and gifted him 100 HP, which he looks at it in confusion, wondering if they're mascots. He confusingly asks what this is and if it's like a status window as Garden worryingly watches him and starts crying again, wondering what he should do for their crazy crown prince in his pitiful condition. Raquel asks him to stop overreacting since he's not crazy and inserts another needle beside the one from before, after which a screen says he's accurately acupunctured the yumen point and the tight feeling in his chest has been alleviated a little. A while later, with many needles puncturing his body, Raquel remarks that it stings and hurts more than he thought while Garden sits down beside his bed and starts praying to God to cure his lunacy. Seeing this, he just decides to finish what he was doing and takes notes of the points. The Chanfu points, the Kongsvi point, and the Yuji point, all of which have been accurately stimulated by him, and then it's as if his lungs are being comfortably massaged according to the screen. Seeing which, he angrily asks why he isn't receiving any HP before finally moving to the Chai's acupoint. Once he's punctured it, the screen says that the acupuncture treatment for the left lung meridian has been successfully completed, and that his lungs are doing a tap dance, which he bewilderingly reacts to before another screen says that his large intestine is completely in sync with the rhythm and is demonstrating impressive wave movements before informing him that his large intestine has given him 100 HP and his lungs have given him 200 HP, taking it to a total of 600. A screen appears again saying his HP has reached the level where it can unlock skills, which will depend on the knowledge and abilities he currently possesses, and asks if he would like to see a list of the total unlockable skills. Raquel wonders if it's like a game where swinging the sword releases an aura or shooting fire from a staff, casting a spell like the classic abilities needed in fantasy games. He clicks on the yes option without hesitation, after which a list of the skills that can be unlocked appears in front of him, showcasing 10 medical-related skills. He nervously laughs, saying these are all the skills he used to perform at work in his past life, and says the start of all treatments is a diagnosis. Only an accurate diagnosis can lead to the right treatment and prescription, which is why he chooses pulse reading. A screen pops up detailing that he's chosen pulse reading, level 1 with a fees of 500 HP, meaning he's got 100 HP left, and that by checking someone's pulse, you can get a rough estimate of the patient's overall health report. Surprised, he decides to perform a check on himself again, and once done, receives in some report and an overall report saying he's S-rank trash and an expected life expectancy of 91 days. Frustrated and in shock, he says he somewhat expected this but couldn't have predicted that this body only has 3 months to live, which is even shorter than an average mobile phone's warranty, but he refuses to give in and starts a complicated procedure which increases his life expectancy by 1 day. Later, his body seems to have taken too much pressure, and the screen advises him to perform acupuncture only once every 3 days, so he stops, remarking that this weakened body can't withstand continuous acupuncture and needs 3 days to recover strength, meaning he'll be able to increase his life expectancy by a month. He decides to use tonics and tells Garden to get him the wolfsbane root, a well-known poison, and explains that he can neutralize its daughter root by a process called toxification, which will bring out its medicinal properties, making it safe to eat. Garden says he didn't understand but leaves to the stores nonetheless, saying this might help his health, but to assure its safety, he'll eat it first. Later, Garden says it smells really bad, prompting Raikeel to ask if he still isn't convinced it's safe, to which he answers that it's probably because it's made from a poison, and asks him to please rethink this, scaring Raikeel, who cheerfully decides to do him as well and says he should try it first, which Garden enthusiastically agrees to, surprising Raikeel, who thinks back on the novel, remembering how he was definitely loyal and devoted and wasn't the family doctor at first. He initially started as an assistant, and even the doctors, brimming with confidence that they could him, later left, and eventually he was the only one left who styled by his side, which is the kind of person he is. But in the end, Garden was falsely accused of murdering the crown prince and sentenced to execution. In present day, Raikeel inwardly compliments Garden for being a genuinely kind soul and deserves to live a good life, but says he still won't share something as good as this with him, glancing at the pot. A while later, Raikeel triumphantly looks at the bowl of the Fidra Aconite Asarum decoction and says it's complete. Garden asks if he should just drink it now, but he declines, saying he understands his enthusiasm, but the concoction needs to cool down first. Hearing this, Garden asks Raikeel how he knows this, suddenly making him realize that this probably isn't the way the real Raikeel would act, so he starts babbling on a cock-and-bull story about a mage who visits him in his dreams, to which he disbelievingly answers that he believes in him, before remarking that the medicine is just way too suspicious, but Raikeel doesn't take note of him and whirls around, saying it's ready. He quickly gulps it all down, teasingly telling Garden that he drank it all, and says something huge is coming in anticipation as the screen appears, saying his Azarhan core energy has awakened, which Raikeel remembers is a technique passed down the Imperial family bloodline, and remarks that the real Raikeel would probably have learned of this, saying that it feels like a donut circling his heart and can feel vitality spreading through his body as he breathes. He happily feels what mana is and remarks that this is awesome before clutching his heart in pain, desperately saying it feels like it's about to burst apart. Garden looks at him in panic as warning screens start popping up, saying the growth balance is off and that the size of the mana circle and his heart are incompatible, and is putting too much pressure on the heart, putting it at risk of stopping, as Raikeel realizes that his real self had been too sickly and couldn't train his mana circle as he grew up, making it smaller than his heart and tightly constricting it from outside. Raikeel says there's only one way left to fix it in that case, and decides to increase the size of the mana circle since he can't reduce the size of his heart, and decides to increase its speed. He grabs it and starts increasing the speed of the number of rotations the mana circle is making to make it run wild. While doing it, he painfully says it feels like he'll pass out, but it's nothing compared to the problems from his past life, remembering how rumors from his clinic being infested with the virus came out, after which he lost all his patients, started losing his hair, and on top of that, his rents, loans, and interests kept piling up until he had to downgrade his house to pay it all off. While painfully wringing it away, he tells it to not underestimate self-employed billionaires' owners in Korea. As he comes back to the room with Garden looking over him in distress, a screen appears saying that thanks to the positive stimulation, the king of the internal organs, which is the heart, is now fully awake.